All right, good morning, everyone. How are y'all doing? Woo! All right, thank you for spending your Thursday morning with us to talk about what's amazing and new in Outlook Calendar. My name is Julia Forian, and I'm the PM for the Calendar service in Outlook, and I'm joined today by Jennifer Liu, the Calendar PM for the Windows Outlook client. All right, let's get started.
Okay, before we dive in, we wanted to give you a few tips to get the most out of this session, as well as out of your calendaring experience in Outlook. So first, throughout the session this morning, we'll be referring to the term modern Outlook clients. So we just wanted to be really clear about which clients we include in that list. So specifically for Windows and Mac, we offer both a subscription client and a perpetual one, but most of our new features will be coming just to the subscription customers. For Outlook on the web and Outlook for iOS and Outlook for Android, the latest versions are kind of always available for you. Next, you'll see this handy little legend. This will be at the top right corner of many of our slides. From past feedback, we've heard that anytime we show a new feature or a new capability, the first thing you want to know is which clients this is available in or which ones it's coming to. So here's kind of like our goal state where a feature is available on all of the endpoints and supported, across all of the services. But in some of the slides, you'll see instead of a checkbox, an ETA for when it'll come to a certain client. The line across the bottom also says which server that functionality is going to be available for. Okay, and this is kind of beyond this session, but this is available now in the Insider Ring for monthly channel, but we've added a new coming soon toggle in the top right of Outlook for Windows. This is a way that we're going to be essentially previewing some of the more work-disruptive changes that are coming to the Outlook client. So you'll have the opportunity to turn on that toggle, try out the new features, and if you click on Coming Soon, you'll see that helpful panel that tells you a little bit more about the features, and also, most importantly, gives you a chance to give us feedback. What do you think about the feature? What do you like and don't like? And since it's a toggle, if something really doesn't work for you, let us know why. You can turn it off and get back to work as usual. This is kind of a paradigm that we're bringing to a bunch of Outlook clients. You'll see something like this coming in Outlook for the Mac as well. And I think you've all heard that in the new Outlook for the web, there's also a toggle for you to try out the new experience kind of at your own timing. Lastly, we have a ton of content to show you today, and we're super excited. But in order to make time for everything, we had to cut basically all of the live demos from today's session. We have an offer, though, so if you want to see a live demo of anything we show today, please come visit the Outlook booth. We'll be there throughout the afternoon, and it'd be really great to, we'd love to talk to you more about the features and show you how they look live.
All right, so last Ignite, one theme that we kept talking about is that as we bring features to Outlook Calendar, we want you to have one consistent meeting scheduling experience, no matter which Outlook you're using. So we're going to repeat that theme here and go through some of the features that we announced last year on one client, as well as the progress that we've made on bringing the same scheduling features across all of Outlook Calendar. So we kind of group our feature sets into three major groups: the who, the what, the when, and the where. The who is all about attendees, the when is the time, and the where is the location. So let's start with the who. Who's coming to your meeting? How do you manage and view the attendees on your meeting invite? So one thing that we actually posted to the Calendar Tech community back in February, we wanted to poll the audience and say, how do y'all feel about accept and do not send a response? What do you expect to happen when an attendee says do not send a response? We got overwhelming feedback from the community that actually when you say do not send a response, the attendees are still expecting that the organizer's tracking list is updated, but just that no email is sent. As y'all probably know as expert Outlook Calendar users, all that happens is it's only currently, only the attendee sees their own response, and the organizer doesn't see anything. So this is one change that we're bringing to Outlook Calendar in Q4 of this year for Mac, web, and mobile. When an attendee says do not send a response, no email will be sent, but the organizer's tracking list will still be updated, and that response will also be shared with all the other attendees that can view the attendee list. So this was direct feedback from y'all, so please join our community and respond to these kind of things, because we really would love to hear from y'all every time we post and ask a question like that. Woo! All right, I don't know who woohooed. We actually have swag for who's the most excited in the audience. So I don't know who did it, but. All right, like, if you're in the back row, feel free to come up if you want swag. Like, you know, SeaWorld, this is the swag zone, the spray zone up here. So, yeah, please come. We do have swag up here. Everything but Jen's water bottle is for go. All right, so the next thing that we talked about last Ignite is that attendees can see other people's responses. And we're really excited that the Android client is about to release that. They were the last client to see it. So now whenever an attendee is viewing the calendar, the attendee list in any Outlook, they'll be able to see how other people responded. Just one more coherence and consistency thing across Outlook calendar.
So we've heard a lot of positive feedback about sharing attendee tracking with the attendees of the meeting and not just limiting that information to the organizer. There's always been one gap in the attendee list tracking, and that's one that we hope to fill in the coming year. In the next quarter, you'll see us releasing in Windows the ability for attendees to see the responses of the resources. So if you're going to a meeting and you're waiting outside the room and you're not quite sure if you have it, now you'll be able to check the tracking status and see how that room responded to the meeting as well. So not only will... Thank you.
Woo! All right. Sorry.
We don't want anyone to get injured at the calendar session today.
The next one's a gentle camera cover, so don't worry, everyone.
Yeah, so this is coming first to Outlook for Windows, but we're looking for how to bring that out to the other Outlook clients as well. Another improvement that will be coming in the same update is that we'll be showing aggregated attendee counts for attendees as well as for organizers. So if you open a meeting as an organizer, you've always kind of seen the summary of how many people have accepted and declined and so forth. But now we'll be showing that same view to attendees as well. So, you know, just because you're not the organizer, you still may be interested to know how many people are coming. Julia will touch on this more, but under the covers, we're also changing where we source this information from for both organizers and attendees. And so this lets us show accurate attendee counts even when a meeting has over 2,000 people attending. Okay, so on the topic of showing responses and counts, we wanted to do a quick audience poll. You know, we've been trying to figure out what to do for this feature, and we thought, why not, you know, crowdsource it today with the people here. So when you're looking at an attendee count in a meeting, like, you know, accepted 10, tentative 5, etc., would you like to exclude room responses? So it just shows the people who are going, like attendee response is 9 if there's 9 people going. Would you like to include room responses, have attendee responses show 10 if you have 9 people going, as well as 1 conference room that's accepted? Or would you like to include room responses but have that listed as a separate section, like attendee responses shows 9 if there's people?
See?
Well, wow, that was it's a lot more immediate than we were expecting, but it's kind of the answer I had thought this group might go for anyway, so thank you very much. And then just in the future, now that we're adding all of this richness to the tracking status, we wanted to move that UI more prominently in the meeting experience. So you'll see that we don't have a timeline for this, but we plan to bring the tracking status information out of the separate pane into the main meeting form for both the organizer and the attendee in Outlook for Windows. If you try out the new Outlook for the web, you'll see this a similar experience like this in their meeting form as well. And that's already available today.
All right, so last Ignite, we also talked about how in the back end, we're fixing that 500 attendee limit where once more than 500 people responded to your meeting, the organizer could no longer fix it. Yay! Woo, and that has been rolled out and fixed for everyone. We wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening in the back end for that. So we've always had this property called recipient list, and that's what used to populate, that continues to populate the to field, and that was also what used to be used for attendee response tracking. But now we actually have a separate property called the attendee list property that can track up to 2,000 individual responses, and that's what the clients will switch to display the attendee list. The other thing that we've been doing is we've been adding summary counts into this, onto every meeting as well. So this is where we count in the service the number of accepted or tentatively accepted or declined. And I guess now we'll have separate summary counts for rooms based on option C. And so that's what the clients are using to show the count of attendees so that we can have a consistent count across all of our Outlook clients. And there's no maximum on summary counts. So if you have more than 2,000 people invited, we won't show the individual responses at that point, but we'll eventually just start showing the summary counts across the clients. Now, a lot of our slides, we have a lot of information session. We won't go into this table, but we want to encourage you to go download the deck afterwards because we've added a lot of details and some of the technical details into the deck that you can read more about later.
Okay, so on that topic, on the topic of attendees, we've also done some work to bring required and optional into the main meeting form. So Outlook has supported the distinction between required and optional attendees for some time now, but it was a little bit buried in the user experience. At least on Windows, you had to go into the address book and then know to add someone as optional if you wanted them to just be aware of the meeting but not feel like they had to attend. You'll see here that in the web and in Windows, we're bringing required and optional, that distinction, right to the main meeting surface. So it'll be really easy for people to start adding optional attendees to their meeting. You know, Julie and I love meetings, but sometimes the best part of a meeting is when you know you don't need to be there and you can decline and free up that time on your calendar. So we hope that this simple UX change will help your users make productive decisions with their time. The next scenario that I want to talk about is, have you ever created a small meeting and then had some of the people you invited forward that meeting to other people, and then have those people forward that meeting to even more people, and pretty soon your small meeting is a little bit out of hand? Has anybody had this experience?
And you need those summary counts, Jen?
So in order to address that, we've added support for organizers to prevent forwarding of their meetings. So you'll see that we have pretty much the same UI in web, Windows, and coming soon in Mac to let a user opt out of forwarding for their meetings. This lets an organizer kind of take back control of the attendee list for meetings where they don't want it to be forwarded around.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right, oh yeah, he's like ducking over there. Oh, sorry. Okay. Here you go.
Dangerous, though, dangerous. Okay, so like I said, we're really happy. We were able to release this feature on web and Windows earlier this month, and it's coming later this year in Outlook for Mac. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the attendee experience when someone receives one of these meetings that has forwarding prevented. So first, the best experience is when you receive this meeting invite on a modern client. When you see that, you'll find the forward UI is completely disabled, and users can't even try to forward one of these meetings from the Outlook client. And if you look at the little grid, the legend at the top of this slide, we actually made sure to have this part of the experience across all of the modern Outlook clients before we released the organizer capability to prevent forwarding. This way, you know, even though you can only prevent forwarding from when you're creating a meeting from web or Windows, whenever someone receives that meeting on any of the Outlook clients, they'll have forwarding properly disabled and kind of get that best experience. Sorry?
It is on. It is on by default. So it's just there's nothing that admin needs to do.
I think she's saying as a particular user, can I say I want all of my meetings to have this as the default? Oh. We don't currently have that, but that's really great feedback. And we do something similar for new time proposals, so it might make sense to extend that here. Thank you, whoever you are, for that feedback.
Here you go.
Sorry?
What if someone hits reply and just changes the recipient the other way to forward?
Yeah, so this is not intended to be a security feature, so we're not encrypting or providing any security guarantees around the content. Yeah, so I think what we're doing is we're just giving the organizer control of that meeting. Some of the encryption things we looked into, but it really would break the ability for you to invite third-party people to the meeting and have them be able to see, you know, details about the meeting and stuff. So that's a great question too. I was thinking about adding that clarification, but now we did. Okay, great. The second best experience is if you're using a legacy or a third-party mail or calendar client, but your mailbox is hosted in O365 or one of the newer Exchange servers, 2016 or 2019. When you go to forward the meeting, the transport will actually block that forward and respond with an NDR. So in this case, your forward doesn't actually go out to the new attendee, and they're not invited to the meeting. And you get a little bit of explanation in the NDR that says you can't forward because the organizer has turned off forwarding for this meeting. Now, we're a little bit bummed about the third experience. If you're on a legacy or third-party client and your mailbox is not hosted on O365 or Exchange on-prem, forwarding is technically still allowed. So in this case, we've kind of broken the initial promise of the feature, and so this is a real bummer.
Yeah, is there anything you can do about it, Jen?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Julia. So because we feel a little bit badly about this scenario, one of the things that we've committed to doing is to minimize the cases where people find themselves in that situation by backporting the attendee part of the experience to Outlook 2013 and 2016. So you guys will know that 2013 is officially out of mainstream support, but because we really want to get full coverage of the attendee experience, we're also backporting this part to that client as well. Well, thank you. A little bit of love for 2013. That's great. Okay, and then just two small notes before we wrap up. You've already called out a few of the caveats, but the first one is actually very similar to what this gentleman said, is we actually still allow people to do copy-paste of that do not forward meeting into an email, and then forward that email to kind of like share the details of the meeting with other people. Like I mentioned, this isn't intended to be a security feature, so we're kind of okay with that content going out to that person. But what happens is in Copy to My Calendar, we actually let you accept the meeting and essentially like insert yourself to the attendee list, and we want to block that part of the experience. So we're going to be blocking Copy to My Calendar for meetings that cannot be forwarded on both Mac and desktop. The other thank you. The other piece is that we currently prevent forwarding in Windows for everybody. So even if you're the organizer or the delegate of the organizer, we're like, nope, this meeting can't be forwarded, and you also cannot forward it. We've been asking them to open the meeting and add an attendee. But it turns out people love forwarding as a quick way to add attendees. And so we're going to be updating to allow forwarding from the calendar item if you're the organizer or a delegate or editor on the organizer's calendar. So those are just two small notes, but in general, the feature is available. Please try it out in Web and Windows and let us know what you think.
All right, that's just the attendee section. So that's the who. Let's talk about the when and how we're helping you find a time to meet. So last Ignite, we announced that we were actually making a lot of performance investments in how fast your free busy comes back for Scheduling Assistant. So last Ignite, we announced that kind of in our numbers, we were seeing free busy take about 4 seconds for a call to be returned, which is kind of crazy. So we talked about how we were going to start caching the availability of the people that you schedule with most frequently in the user's mailbox. So at this Ignite, we're really excited to say that across all Outlook clients, 60% of queries, 60% of queries are coming back within 200 milliseconds. And that's what we're able to fully serve 60 queries directly from that cache in the user's mailbox. When we miss that cache for those remaining 40% inside your organization, we've actually started storing a cache of your own calendar view in your mailbox. So let's say I'm looking up Jen's free busy. If she's not in my cache, when we hit her mailbox, instead of calculating that calendar view in line, we're actually reading from a pre-calculated, always up-to-date cache in her mailbox. So we're able to read from her cache and quickly return. So those remaining 40% of queries are down to 800 milliseconds. Yeah. We're continuing to make optimizations in this. We don't think 800 milliseconds is fast enough, so we're going to keep working on that optimization there. And I know many of y'all also have federated tenants or hybrid tenants. We haven't started looking at free busy, cross-tenant, or cross-premise yet, but because we really want to bring 800 down even further, and then we'll start looking at more investments in free busy. But we're not stopping. You'll hear more about this next night as well. So in addition to just looking up when someone's available, sometimes you want to create that meeting with different start and end time zones. This has been something that users have always been able to do in the Windows client, but we're really excited that now already released in Mac, you can set different start and end time zones for a meeting, and coming in Q4 in Web, you'll also be able to do the same. So I don't know, many of y'all probably had, you're booking flights or you're adding things to your calendar. Now you can set different start and end time zones, which is a big ask, especially from delegates that we heard on Outlook Calendar. Another thing that we heard is that I want more time zones to show on my calendar surface. Now, in user voice, there's some people out there that say, I want up to 10 time zones. I don't even want to see my calendar. I just want a strip of time zones across my calendar surface. That's what we heard from people. But we said, OK, all right, well, let's just get y'all 3 right now. So Windows has 3 time zones already. Mac released a second. They're just about to allow you to add a third. And Web soon will allow you to add a third. So we want a consistent up to 3 time zones across the Outlook clients, but really the scenario and the problem that we heard is that you actually are interested in up to 10. Maybe you don't want to see all 10 at the same time, but you kind of care about up to 10 time zones. And so we're looking across the Outlook clients about how do we surface more than just 3 time zones, but also not like, take away all your calendar surface for you. So that's why these settings are not yet roamed to the service. So you'll have to set it up individually on each client, because we're trying to actually figure out what the best experience is, and then we'll build a consistent and roamed experience across the Outlook clients. Okay, the final thing is Find Time. Now, last Ignite, I think people were crying in the audience. It was really sad when we announced we were deprecating Find Time. But this Ignite, it's back. It's back. Woo! I wish I could do like an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, but it's back, baby. Yeah, Find Time is back. So it has officially replaced Web's Pull to Meet. The Outlook engineering team now owns the code base for Find Time. We are investing in Find Time. It is our meeting poll solution in Outlook and across the Outlook clients. So we spent the past year working on GDPR compliance, how the data's stored and everything like that. We've also started cleaning up old polls so they're just not cluttering your calendar. And we've also started sending voting reminders to attendees when the meeting's coming up and they haven't yet voted. So over the next 6 months, what we want to do is increase language support more geo-collocation of data, and install by default in Windows and Mac. That's a big thing. That shows how committed we are to Find Time as our meeting poll solution. And we're also going to start working on how do we make it work for delegated and shared calendars. So if you're a calendar delegate today, Find Time add-in doesn't really work in your same meeting workflows, so we'll invest in that.
Okay, now we get to the third part of our trifecta. We've talked about the who of the meeting, the when of the meeting, and now we're going to talk about the where. So the first thing that you may have already noticed lighting up in the web and iOS clients is type down location suggestions. So now when you click into the location field, immediately you'll see suggestions which are personalized for you. And then as you keep typing, the suggestions narrow down to ones that match what the substring that you're typing. This is a little bit similar to the people suggestion experience in the 2-line of when you're composing an email. For me personally, that's been a really life-changing experience, being able to just type down people in the 2-line. And we hope that being able to type down locations will also make it much easier for you to add a conference room to a meeting. What you'll see in the middle is a screenshot of feature work that's in development in Windows right now. This is a live screenshot from our internal dog food build. So you'll see that we're surfacing the same set of suggestions that you see in web and iOS, and it's all powered by the same Outlook Places backend service. And so you'll get a really consistent experience as you create meetings and add locations from any of the Outlook clients. We don't have an exact release date for the Windows experience, but I just wanted to let you guys know that it's real, it's working, and hopefully we'll have more updates coming soon. We actually have a slide that talks to that, so I might just jump to that right now. But basically, one of
Hey,
we didn't plant this.
I put it in the audience today.
So the question is whether we automatically filter by capacity, and we don't automatically do that. These days with geo-collocation and a lot of people dialing in online for meetings, it's not necessarily certain that if you invite a DL with 20 people, that you only want to see conference rooms that can accommodate over 20 people. So we're not automatically hiding those from you, but we want to add the ability to add those filters. So you can say, I'm inviting 20 people, but I actually need a room that fits 12 or something like that. And that's going to be coming soon to the browse room experience, which I'll just hop back to right now. So what you'll see here is
I'll play it.
It should be animated, but this is a little bit of a sneak peek at the the new scheduling assistant experience in the new Outlook for Web. It's really beautiful, and it's very familiar feeling to those of you who are coming from Windows and Mac. So one of the things that we're adding is when you click on Add Rooms in that experience, it'll pop out this room browsing experience, which you can kind of think of as like a next generation room finder powered by the new Outlook Places service backend. It lets you search across room lists, and right now you can already filter by room list. And coming soon to this experience will be the ability to filter by capacity as well as to hide unavailable rooms. Okay, so we already talked about this FAQ. The next one is whether we search by room list name. So this is not yet something we do, but it's very much on our roadmap to support this. So if you just type the building name, you should be able to see all of the rooms in that building, even if it doesn't have the building name in its own name. And last, people always are curious how it ranks which rooms to show. And so the top priority is given to rooms that you've booked previously. So if you schedule a lot of meetings, the rooms that you use a lot will come up first. If those are all unavailable, though, we'll actually also prefer rooms that you've attended meetings in. So, you know, Julia's organized a bunch of meetings in her favorite rooms, and sometimes I'll see those in my suggestions because I go to her meetings. Yeah, and, and then the last set is if it looks at those rooms and it looks at the room lists that have those rooms, and if it can't find any that you've actually been to, it'll try to suggest other rooms in those same room lists. So that's kind of the I guess that's the layman description of what we show in the suggestions. But in the next slide, we'll go a little bit deeper into where we store these suggestions and where they're sourced from. So the first source is what I kind of mentioned. It's your personal index. So it has rooms that you've booked or attended meetings in. It also includes custom locations that you've typed in. So if I often go to, you know, my gym or to, you know, my daughter's school or something like that, those custom strings will also surface as suggestions over time. And then last, it does include physical locations that I've used previously. So for example, if I often go to the Starbucks on the corner and like kind of schedule meetings there, that'll also start showing up in my own personal suggestions. The second, and this is the part that we're really working on, is the company index. So in the cases when you want to schedule something that's not in your normal recently used rooms and personal history, we want to be able to actually surface rooms and resources from across your organization. And so we want these to be indexed by name and by room list and to show fast availability. And those are some of the technical challenges that we're working through in order to get fast, you know, suggestions for any room in your company, even if it's one you have not used yourself. So that part is in progress. And then the last is if you've been using suggestions, you'll see that we also surface public locations as provided to us by Bing Maps. And so this is where you can, you know, many of you have been in Orlando and probably attended meetings that were scheduled at a restaurant or something, and it had all of the you know, coordinates and address of that place. And so we do find that that's a useful feature, but we do prioritize those public results after ones within your organization, because most of the time you're trying to schedule internal meetings. So the top one and the third one are released, and the middle one is one that we're working on. And for the top two, we're actually looking to enhance all of these internal places with metadata about address, capacity, and capabilities. So in the future, you'll be able to filter by, you know, the number of people, but also like whether or not a room has AV, for example. And these are things that people have been asking for a while, and that's also in progress. So just wanted to let you know what we have now, and then also what's kind of on our roadmap for surfacing even better location suggestions in the future.
Cool. So at this Ignite, y'all probably heard that Microsoft is going big on Teams. Everyone here has heard of Teams, right? Okay. So we felt like we couldn't talk about the location without talking about Teams. Outlook's a big part of that Teams story. So by the end of 2018, once your tenant is enabled for Microsoft Teams, users will be able to create Teams meetings on any Outlook client, Windows, Mac, web, and mobile. One challenge that we hit when we did this is that with Skype, every client had implemented a lot of custom client-side logic to determine whether or not this user can create Skype meetings. And bringing that logic across all the clients was something that we actually wanted to fix with the migration to Teams. So with the migration to Teams, we've made some service-side investments that creates a consistent team scheduling experience in each of the Outlook clients. So I'll tell you what's kind of changing behind the scenes. So previously, whether or not to show the option to add Skype was on a per-user basis. But y'all know, especially with shared and delegated calendars, that you know, Skype licenses are really actually at the calendar level folder. So now in the service, we actually tell the clients per calendar whether or not what providers that this calendar is enabled for. So for clients like mobile and web, where you're only going to see one kind of create online meeting option, they'll use the default online meeting provider, which will always be Teams if the user is Teams enabled. And then if they're enabled for both Skype and Teams on Windows and Mac, you'll be able to see all your allowed online meeting providers. So you could see one or both depending on what you as an admin have configured the users for. So that tells the clients whether or not to show the options, which creates a much more consistent experience across all the Outlook clients. The other change that we're making is now when the Outlook clients create a Teams meeting or a Skype meeting, instead of trying to call the Skype or Teams service themselves and insert the coordinates and into the meeting body and handle all of that custom business logic, they'll actually pass that off to the service. So they'll tell the service, hey, I want to create this as an online meeting, and here's the online meeting provider that I want to use. I want to use Teams or I want to use Skype. So when that meeting is created by the service will then call into Teams or Skype APIs, grab all the meeting coordinate information, insert it into the meeting body, and also stamp a lot of properties on the meeting itself, which is actually returned to the clients as kind of a group of online meeting information. Now, this includes things like join URL, so you'll start to be able to see the ability to join an online meeting very easily in each of the Outlook clients, because now we have one single consistent property for join URL. The other thing we're doing is returning conference ID and phone number. So many of y'all have asked, I want to be able to just one-touch dial into my mobile phone. You've had that experience where you're dialing in, you're in the car, and you're like quickly looking at conference ID and trying not to hit the person in front of you. That's the kind of thing that we want to do when we move this to the service here. So we can offer everything as a first-class property to the Outlook clients. All right. It wouldn't be a calendar session unless we had a whole session, a section about calendar sharing and delegates. So we'd like to share some of the stuff happening with calendar sharing with you. Last Ignite, we announced that we are moving to simplify the share and accept and edit experience across the Outlook clients. So since last Ignite, Windows Outlook has released the simplified sharing UI in the Windows Monthly client, and we're just about to release it in Mac. What that means is that across every Outlook client, you can share to the same set of people. You see the same set of people. The permission levels are all consistent, and you no longer have to share your primary calendar if you want to share a secondary calendar. That was a big thing that is also fixed in Mac coming in Q4. Yay! Please hold your applause till the end of the calendar sharing section. So we also have released the ability to accept a shared calendar. And y'all know in Mac you never had an accept button on a sharing invite. So if you wanted to accept a calendar sharing invite, you had to go file, open another user's calendar. It was kind of a hassle. So with coming in Q4, you'll have a native accept button to accept. And that's also been released on all the other Outlook clients. Now, the clients that have check marks up there are also, when you accept with them, you'll be on the new model of calendar sharing, which we'll go into what that means on the next slide. OK, so we have the old model of calendar sharing, which is kind of how shared calendars have always worked, and we have the new model. So I'll explain old model first. This will take a quick refresher here. So, when a delegate or a sharee is syncing their mailbox to their Outlook clients, they're reading and writing their own calendars locally from their own mailbox. And in the old model of calendar sharing, when you had a shared calendar, you can think of like a hyperlink or a pointer was in your mailbox, and it pointed to the owner's mailbox. So each client had custom client-side business logic to go remotely find that owner's calendar and remotely read and remotely write. That caused some performance and reliability issues because the clients were often generating their own meeting messages and creating their own calendar items. So it wasn't quite as reliable as editing your own calendar. And then the other issue is that mobile clients don't understand these kind of hyperlinks or these remote calendar entries. And so were never able to see shared calendars on your mobile phone. So the new model of calendar sharing, when you accept from any of those clients we just showed on the previous slide, when you accept what's created in the delegate or the sharee's mailbox is actually a local calendar. So we create a calendar in that delegate's mailbox, and then we do server replication between the two mailboxes so that when that delegate or sharee is syncing on an Outlook client, they're just reading and writing all the calendars as if they owned every single calendar. There's no more remote reads or remote writes or client-side logic to go find that owner's mailbox. They're just able to handle it just like any other calendar that they currently have. The other benefit of that is on mobile clients, these shared calendars just suddenly start showing up because they're just another calendar in the delegate's mailbox that the mobile phone gets. Yeah. Woo! We're really excited about that. You can self-upgrade today to the new model. And one kind of thing we wanted to call out so far is we're really excited that next month Mac is about to release these changes to insiders. We've already seen major decreases in escalations and support calls coming in into the calendar service. And we've only released it on web and mobile so far. So we're super excited when Mac and Windows come up there as well. The other nice thing is that all the clients are now completely server controlled when it comes to how delegated calendars are accessed and read and written to. So all the business logic has moved up to the service. Last Ignite also, we had told you, oh, we're only going to replicate a certain subset of MAPI properties to the delegates mailbox. And the feedback overwhelming that we heard. So we just want to iterate again, like, please, give us feedback, leave it in your session emails, stop by the booth, because what you say at Ignite is truly important to us, and we do take that to heart. So one change that we've made is we're actually going to replicate every single MAPI property into the delegates mailbox in order to have full support for any kind of add-in or anything like that that your business operates on. And then also, we are going to start figuring out how to make read-write sharing work cross-tenant for you. So we hope that that's something that we can talk to y'all about next Ignite.
So I know a lot of you are eagerly awaiting the faster and more reliable sync and edit to come to the Outlook for Windows client. And I imagine some of the eagle-eyed in the room have noticed that in that grid in the top right, we're targeting 2019 for that update. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit more insight into where we're at with this, this change in Outlook for Windows. Okay, so first, the faster and more reliable sync and edit. Not only is Outlook Desktop moving to the new model, using this local copy of the shared calendar instead of the remote copy, but we're also, in order to communicate with that local copy of the shared calendar, we need to change protocols. So Outlook turned 21 last year, and it's all of its history. It's always used MAPI to talk to the server. In order to move to new model shared calendars, we're actually taking a big step and moving from MAPI to REST for updating those calendars. Now that in the U.S., if you're 21, you're of legal drinking age. So we're saying something like, 3 cheers for REST. But anyways, I think those of you who are familiar with Outlook know that this is a pretty major change for us. We sort of say it's the biggest architectural change we've made to Outlook since it was first written. Oh, thank you. And so we're really trying to be cautious about how we roll that out to you so that the change management isn't like a complete nightmare. So the first thing that we're doing is we're making the experience opt-in in Windows when we first release the monthly channel. So you'll see this advanced option in the account settings, where when we initially release the monthly channel, this new option will be off by default. And interested users who want to try it out can check the box and try it out and let us know how the experience is. So I just want you to rest assured that even when we roll out to monthly channel, it just won't automatically change everybody's shared calendars under the covers. You'll have some control over when that gets turned on to your users. After some time, when we have more confidence that this is really working for a broad swath of customers, we're going to be turning the checkbox on by default. We're not going to take it away, so even after we update monthly channel to be on by default and go to semi-annual target on by default, we want to leave the box there so you can uncheck the box to opt out if this rewrite doesn't work for you. So this is what we're doing in the actual options UI, but we know that many of you like to manage through group policy. So we're also going to be adding a new group policy for managing REST calendars in Windows. So I've talked a little bit about how we're using REST for these new model shared calendars, but our intention is not to stop there, but to use REST to update all of your O365 calendars. So we're actually designing the GPO with that kind of future in mind. So this new GPO is actually going to configure Outlook usage of REST for both these new model shared calendars in the short term, as well as for all of your O365 calendars once that becomes available. So I have some details in the slide. It's a little bit small on the screen, but we'll have these slides available for download, and you can take a look. And obviously, before we release, we'll be communicating a lot more about these configurations. Just so you know, when the policy is enabled, shared calendar improvements will be on by default for everybody in your org, and they won't be able to turn it off. So this way, everybody in your org is using it. If likewise it doesn't work for your organization, maybe you have some business critical add-in where it's not fully supported on REST yet, or something like that, we want to let you use the GPO to disable it for everyone in your org, so nobody kind of goes into advanced settings, finds this thing, and gets themselves into a bad state. So that's kind of what we're thinking about for management. But another thing I wanted to share today is that this code is actually getting real in Outlook Desktop or Outlook for Windows. We actually have some of our internal delegates using REST to manage our own Outlook executives' calendars, and they're using this day to day and giving us feedback and helping us find issues. But guys, this is real. Like, people are actually using REST, and they're actually updating these new model shared calendars. And we're actually looking for a few beta testers from outside of Microsoft. We've got one volunteer right here. So we've talked to to a few customers already, and there seems to be some interest. But if this is something you're interested in, before releasing broadly to monthly channel, we wanted to get a small number of real users, especially those who have currently experienced pain with shared calendars, to try out the new improvements. And then we'll have like a high-touch feedback loop to kind of get your feedback, both like objectively, like bugs you notice and things that don't work, as well as subjectively, like does it feel better? Like does it feel faster? Do you actually have a lot more confidence that the changes you're making are making it to your manager's calendar? That sort of thing. So, like we mentioned earlier, I'll be at the booth. This is something we're really interested in partnering with you guys so that it's a really smooth release to everyone, because we know this has been a pain point and we don't want it to be a pain point in the rolling out process as well. So, that's all I have.
Okay, so y'all were really excited that shared calendars are coming to mobile, but what if you already have a shared calendar and you want to figure out how do I make that show up on my mobile device? How do I upgrade an existing old model calendar? Or I just want to start adding shared calendars and viewing them on mobile phone. So as of Monday morning, we released this at Ignite. The first, in Outlook Mobile, you can go into the calendar on iOS and Android. If you go into the calendar app, you view your calendar list and you click Add Shared Calendar, you can now just search for anyone in your organization, and then you'll be able to add their shared calendar directly from mobile phone. Yeah. So if you have an existing old model shared calendar, what this does is it just upgrades that old model calendar to a new model calendar. If you have never opened this calendar on any Outlook client, it will just create a new it will create a new model calendar for you that you'll see on your mobile phone as well as all your other Outlook clients. So you can do that today from your Outlook app right now. That's the easiest way. The second easiest way is coming in Q4. If you don't use a mobile phone or you prefer to do it from a laptop or a desktop computer, starting in Q4, when you add a calendar from directory, from web, or from Mac, if you've been explicitly shared the calendar, so if someone has gone and entered your name and granted you individual permissions, opening their calendar will upgrade to the new model. Now, if you've never been explicitly shared the permissions, you have access via the default organization permission levels, or you're part of a security group, this will continue to open it as an old model calendar. This was also, again, a feedback that y'all gave us. At first, we were saying every open calendar, regardless of permission level, goes to new model, and the feedback that you gave was that you often just open a calendar to view someone's availability. So now it's only if you've been explicitly shared when you add a calendar will it open as a new model calendar. And so the final way is this is a calendar session, but people do love email. So if you really just like sending emails and getting emails, you can continue to upgrade by resharing the calendar and re-accepting the calendar via any of those clients that we showed earlier that had the new accept experience. So you can always continue to reshare and re-accept the calendar. So Jen talked a little bit about what the change management will be like for the Windows client. We'd also like to go through what it will be like on the Mac client. So on the Mac client, as this starts rolling out in Mac builds, your users will just see a pop-up that says, Outlook needs to restart. And if they click Restart Outlook, they'll automatically move. What is happening behind the scenes in Outlook for Mac is they've always synced calendars via EWS, and the Mac client is moving to sync all calendars via REST. And so what happens when you click Restart Outlook is it just resyncs all of your calendars via REST and continues to sync via REST behind the scenes. So that brings you a lot of reliability to shared calendars, but also all of your calendars, because all of your calendars are starting to sync down and up via REST. So one big change that means for users in Mac is that you'll have the same calendar list in Mac as you have in all of your other Outlook clients. Yeah. As you'll know, Mac has always had its own list of shared calendars. So if you open a calendar in Mac, you wouldn't see it in the web or the other Outlook clients. Now there's a shared calendar list in Mac. So there's the same 14 calendars in Mac over there. Hey. Yeah, but the other thing that I think, this is the one that I thought was super exciting in Mac as well, is that now you can view free busy calendars in Mac. So if you hadn't had full details to a calendar, you couldn't ever open someone else's calendar in Mac. Now you'll be able to open anyone's calendar with free busy and limited details in Mac as well. So same set of calendars in all your clients. Again, change management is a big deal for y'all. So we wanted to let you know that coming in October and Mac is the Insiders Fast. So Insiders Fast will start seeing that restart option in Outlook for Mac, and when they restart, they'll move to rest. As we get good feedback and optics coming in that this has been successful, we'll expand to Insider Slow, of course. And then we kind of do a staged rollout to all of our production users in small increments. So you might see some of your users get the restart, but not all of them at once, because we want to roll this out slowly. This is a big, fundamental change in, our Windows and Mac clients. Now, admins sometimes don't want some users to have something and not the other. So in Mac, we're going to give you the option to toggle this change off until it's 100%. So what you can say is, I don't want any of my users to see the restart until everyone sees the restart at the same time. So you'll have this as a plist option in the Outlook for Mac client to manage your rollout inside your organization.
Okay, one last note before we exit the shared calendar section of our session is whenever we talk about shared calendar improvements in Outlook for Windows, we almost immediately get asked, well, what about shared mailboxes and the 500 folder limit? So technically, this is not really a calendar topic, but since this is often a frequent follow-up question, I just thought I would preempt that and give you guys an update on what we're thinking about that limitation. So as many of you know, Outlook historically has limited users to 500 mailboxes 500 folders between their mail and calendar folders in a secondary mailbox. And then after 500, sync becomes really unreliable and sometimes stops working for that mailbox. I wanted to give you a little explanation, since this is a technical session, about why we hit that limit. So for your own mailbox, Outlook is able to register for a single notification at the root of that mailbox and get notified whenever there's new messages in any of the folders or subfolders of that mailbox. For a secondary mailbox, and I just want to clarify, this is maybe a mailbox that you have auto-mapped into your account, or a mailbox that you actually go into account settings and do like open additional mailbox. This is what we kind of mean by a secondary mailbox. For those mailboxes, Outlook has to register separately for notifications on each folder and subfolder, because we don't know for sure that you have permissions on every folder in that mailbox. And so what this leads to is basically an open connection, like at a one per folder level, and currently Exchange limits MAPI clients to 500 open connections at a time. So this is really why we run into that limit, and this has been this way in Outlook for some time. But I wanted to give you the good news that this is something that we're working to lift. We found a new way to be notified about changes on that secondary mailbox that doesn't run into the same limitation, and we're going to be rolling that out gradually as well. For those of you who are hit by this issue, again, you can come talk to me. We're looking for some pilot users to test this update before we turn it on by default for everybody. Okay, got a couple of volunteers already. Take a Bluetooth speaker in the meantime. Yeah. Anyway, so please let us know. We have it available behind a private reg key for now, if some of you want to try it out with the affected users and let us know how the experience is. And then after we get a little bit of pilot usage, we want to actually roll that out broadly, and we'll also be sharing new recommendations about how many folders you should have in these shared mailboxes. Just so you know, it won't be a hard limit like the 500 folders was, but we will want to provide some guidance about at what point Outlook becomes a little bit non-performant or uses too much memory and things like that. So we'll provide some guidelines towards the end of this year. But this is a really exciting improvement for those people who've been affected by this, and I just thought it'd be kind of related to the shared calendar topic. So we'll move back to calendar now. One last slide about shared calendars. For all of you shared calendar fans, it sounds like there are some of you here. We have this short URL here that you can always visit to go to a web page that we keep up to date with the latest improvements in shared calendars. So anytime some new capability lights up, like being able to add shared calendars on mobile, that will make it onto this web page. So you can always kind of check in there to see what the current status is of any of the improvements we've been talking about over the last 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, thank you guys. So that kind of wraps up our shared calendar section of our session. If you're disappointed about the lack of shared calendar coverage, please visit the website or come talk to us at the booth, and we're happy to dig in more. Okay, now we want to talk about some brand new features. Yay! All of the things that we'll be showing today are going to be shipping soon on at least one endpoint. There's many more things we're working on, but since they don't have any targeted release dates, we're not going to be showing those in this section. So some of you might ask, why do we just ship new features on one endpoint to start? And I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on how we decide what to work on in the Outlook org. So the first part of our priority framework is to focus on current promises. So these are live site issues, ways we can improve our agility as a product team, and fixing issues with our fundamental user flows. So with a product as complicated as Outlook, we could actually spend all of our time in that top area fixing, continuing to polish that product. But we also reserve some time for making new promises, and this is where we actually add new features to the Outlook portfolio. The way that we do this, though, is we actually intentionally start iterating on a new feature in one endpoint. What we found is this is a really good way for us to work out the nuances of the experience, and especially some of the admin controls and things like that, so that we can have a really great package before we start bringing that out to other endpoints. And then for the features that have a lot of promise, like the ones that really resonate with users, the ones that people are actually engaging with and using, and the ones that we get good feedback about, those actually kind of get promoted and go cross-platform. So not everything that we iterate on will go to every endpoint, but the ones that really show a lot of promise and become cross-platform, and at that point they kind of become part of our current promises that we maintain to the same level of quality as the other features of Outlook. So one key point here is that user feedback is a central part of every step of this process. We look at your input when deciding what features to even start working on, and then as we're going to refine them and promote them to go cross-platform, it's all really based on what users are engaging with and what users are saying. So please do engage with us and let us know what you think about the stuff we're planning, as well as the stuff that you're starting to see light up in your Outlook experiences. In general, I feel like our org has become super customer obsessed, and I think hopefully you'll see that in the investments that we're making. They're the ones that people have been asking for. And if it's not, please let us know, and we'd like to make sure that the things that are important to our users are the things that we're working on.
Cool. So what do y'all think is the first feature that we are going to start fixing? If you were to ask for something, shout it out.
Recurring meetings.
Yes! He really is a fan. Recurring series is the first thing that we are going to start fixing and changing in the Outlook clients. So starting in the web, if you are on the first release tenant and you're on the new Outlook on the web, starting in the next couple of months, users are going to see a new option when editing and managing recurring series. You'll have the option to edit or delete or cancel from this date forward, and all of your meeting history will be preserved when you do that. We won't lose your past exceptions. Yeah, so you'll see that coming soon. We also, the UI for this feels small and simple, but behind the scenes there was a lot of work that went into it. And so again, as this is a technical session, we're going to actually share what's happening behind the scenes for recurring series and what you can expect for your user experience when users choose this option. Okay, so we have a recurring series here with 6 instances. You can see that instance A, D, and F are recurring series exceptions. They have that little icon with the slash through it. So if a user, let's say on instance C, says, I want to edit from this date forward, what we do behind the scenes is we actually take that original series and we first update the series end date. And we always choose the instance date, the pivot instance, with -1 day. So in this case, the original series end date would be updated to be June 10th because the pivot date was June 11th. And we also preserve those past exceptions, so you'll see that A continues to be an exception and nothing's changed about what happens there. The next thing we do is we actually take a copy of that original series, delete all of the past exceptions, and update the start end date to be that pivot date. So on this case, the new series, W through Z, is set to 6/11. The other change that we're making is we're not only preserving your past exceptions, but we're also preserving your future exceptions, because we know sometimes you've moved that one instance for a company holiday, or you couldn't get the room, and so you'd move that, and we don't want you to lose all that effort that you'd put into those future instances as well. So we are preserving both past and future exceptions with this change. So I wanted to share 3 technical challenges that we hit here and let you know a little bit even more what's happening behind the scenes. So the first technical challenge was cancellation messages. So if you do a cancel from this date forward, you're actually not canceling the series. You're really just updating the series with a new end date. So what do we do with that cancellation message? Because we want to allow users to communicate and say, oh, I'm shortening it because the project has shipped, or we don't need the series anymore. So we need to allow them to send a message, but we don't want that cancellation message to be confusing when users are viewing the recurring series. So for Office 365 attendees, when they get that meeting message, we insert the cancellation message at the top of the meeting body. So they'll see that kind of message with a horizontal bar and then the original meeting body there. Just like you do when you get a meeting series update, we always show you the full meeting series, full meeting body. But the change for Office 365 is when we get this a cancel from this date forward meeting message update, we actually don't copy the meeting body from the meeting message update to the calendar item, because we don't want someone to open a recurring series that's on their calendar and have something at the top say like, I'm canceling this recurring series, and all of a sudden they're like, wait, is this on my calendar or canceled, or like what's happening? So we leave the calendar item alone, and they'll only see it in the meeting message body. Now, we haven't taken this to on-prem servers yet, so on-prem users will see the cancellation message overlaid over the meeting body, and then they'll also see that the meeting message processing in on-prem will also copy it there. So we're looking into ways that we could also improve the Exchange 2019 on-prem experience as well, so they could have something more like Office 365. But when this first releases, this is the experience that your users can expect. The second technical challenge was room bookings. So when we're updating we're updating one series and creating a new series, we don't want you to lose the room in that process. So in Office 365, it works great when you say update an end date of original series, and then the room updates that, so they get that shortened series to June 10th. And then the new series goes out, and the room's free because it's just been updated, and the room accepts the meeting series. And that all works fantastic, and it's fabulous. But in the case where the order of delivery comes differently, because in Office 365, and especially with on-prem, if your conference rooms are on-prem, we actually can't guarantee the order in which those messages are delivered to the room. So there's that case where the new series invite goes out first, before the original series has been updated. So the conference room gets that new invite and is like, nah, no thanks, I'm already booked. And they decline the invite to the organizer, and then your update goes out, and then the room accepts that. So you've lost the room as part of an edit from this date forward, and we don't want that to happen. So what we've done on the organizer's side, and we did this on the organizer's side because we know about hybrid cases where the organizer might be an Office 365 user who has this option, but your room is hosted on-prem. So when that decline comes back into the organizer's, to the organizer's mailbox, if it's a decline for an edit from this date forward, we actually don't show it to the organizer. We don't surface it in their inbox, and instead we retry to book the room. And we retry currently up to 2 times with back-off logic to ensure that when we try again, they'll hopefully be there. Now, we have a lot of optics instrumented around this scenario to ensure that there's 100% rebooking rate. Like, we aren't going to just do up to 2 times and then done. The reason that we put a cap on this is because there are cases where the organizer might never have had the room on the original series in the first place, and we don't want to just infinitely keep spamming the room until they accept, because they'll never accept in that case because you never had the room to begin with. So we currently retry up to 2 times, but we're closely monitoring the rebooking rate, and we'll keep increasing and changing the back-off logic until we can guarantee 100% rebooking rate if you had the room to begin with. So that's a big scenario for us to make sure you don't lose the room when you edit from this date forward. The third case is meeting messages. So you'll know that in Calendar, we send a lot of meeting messages, especially if we're starting to preserve future exceptions and we're updating a meeting series that had a lot of future exceptions and we're sending a new invite, and there could just be a storm of meeting messages there. So at a high level, what we did for Office 365 attendees is that when we actually auto-process some of the meeting messages related to these recurring series changes for them, so that the attendees only see the most minimal set of meeting messages when a meeting series is edited from this date forward. And currently for on-prem and external, we show all meeting message visible. But we don't want to go into this chart, but this is our handy-dandy chart for all the different flavors of Office 365, your client version, on-prem, your client version, and the way that you can expect meeting messages to go. And there's a lot of footnotes and stuff. We won't go into this now, but we want to let you know this is in the deck. If you want to download it later and experience this, please do give us feedback on this, because this is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about what are the most, what meeting messages do attendees want to see. So please give us feedback. A really exciting thing, at least to us in the calendar service, was all the like getting to touch this really old code and say, what's happening with recurring series? So we actually found 2 bugs during the process that we wanted. I don't know if y'all are familiar with these or you've noticed them in your environments, but we wanted to let you know we are now aware of these and we are fixing them as part of this recurring series update. So it used to be that if an attendee was only invited to 1 future exception, so they're not part of the series, they just were invited to 1 future exception, when the series was canceled, that attendee never got a cancellation. So they had a meeting on their calendar that was no longer happening. We fixed that with this update, and we're currently fixing the second bug, which is that if a meeting series had future exceptions and one of the attendees forwarded to someone else, that forwarded attendee only ever got the series and they didn't get the future exception. So again, an attendee on a recurring series had a different kind of experience than what everyone else who was originally invited to the series had. So we're fixing those bugs if you're aware of those. If you have other bugs that you think should be on this list that we should be aware of, please stop by the booth and talk to us, and we want to make sure we're aware of all of those issues.
And just in case you're concerned, like these bugs aren't happening for your Windows client users. So if a lot of people are creating a recurring series on Windows, they're not going to be hitting this. So just so you know, there is still a differentiation until we move to the REST API between the Windows logic and other clients. So.
Yeah. And then the final thing that we're doing related to data model and calendar is that we're actually starting to preserve declined events in the calendar. And so when you decline an event starting in the next few months, if you're in the first release tenant and you are on the new Outlook on the web, in Outlook on the web, you'll have the option to show declined events on your calendar directly. These can be declined from any Outlook client, but you'll only see them on the web because it's the client that chooses to show the declined events that we are now storing in the calendar folder. These are full meeting invites, so you can decline a series and then change your response and accept the series. You can decline the series but accept an instance. All the flavors is just like another meeting in your mailbox, and you'll be able to see that in web. They will show as free. You won't get a reminder for them, and we will be excluding declined events from your free busy calls. So this is coming soon as well, so you'll be able to accept those meetings that you used to never have to go to your deleted items to go find again.
Okay, another area that we've been thinking a lot about is how to help users who are trying to meet with people who are in other locations or other time zones. So some of you may have seen this demo at the Outlook for the Web session, but what we're going to be doing is when you start scheduling meetings, we're going to take into account the home time zone of the attendees that you've invited to the meeting. So if people have different home time zones, we'll actually suggest, we'll have scheduling insights shown in the meeting form, and it'll let you know what time the meeting is currently scheduled for that user in their home time zone. And so you'll see there, like, there's a bunch of people in one time zone and then a few in others, and there's a little indicator of what time the meeting's currently at in those time zones. Additionally, at the bottom, there's some suggested times, and those times take into account working hours in those attendees' home time zones and tries to find overlap, as close as possible. So I just wanted to call out, this is just a first step towards improving how you work with people that are in other time zones and other locations. We're kind of pivoting on the attendee's home mailbox, which may not be accurate for many of you right now as you sit in Orlando, and also, may not take into account future travel plans when we know that you'll be away for a certain week. But this is kind of a first step of bubbling up some of this information in a place that might be useful and helping to do some of the computations that people are currently having to do either in their heads or through third-party tools. So we'll continue to work on this area, but look for this to be coming soon in the Outlook for the Web. It's currently in development, so it won't be part of the toggle right away, but turn on the new Outlook for the Web, and this improvement should be coming shortly. The last thing is, have you ever had one of these days? Has anybody? Basically, where your calendar is just packed and full of back-to-back meetings. So unfortunately, this is getting to be more and more common of a scenario for IW workers, and we actually had several customers approach us and let us know that they were building their own add-ins and tools to help shorten meetings by default, and whether we were looking into adding this option to Outlook natively. We hadn't really been, but actually after the third customer approached us with pretty much the same ask, we decided to add this option to Outlook for Windows. I'm really excited to announce that we'll have these new options available available for people on monthly channel in this coming quarter. It's a little small on the screen, but it's a checkbox that lets you say, hey, I want to end all of my appointments and meetings early, and then some suggested time periods. So by default, we'll shorten short meetings by 5 minutes, and then for a longer meeting, thank you. For meetings that are 1 hour or longer, we'll shorten them by 10 minutes. Those are our kind of built-in product defaults, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but as an org, you could actually set your own suggested defaults through a registry key, and that would update what the user sees in their options UI. Additionally, we are going to support this through group policy as well if you want to kind of enforce an org-wide default. Some of the customers we talk to are really trying to change their culture around meetings, and so this is a way to kind of make sure that everybody's using the same kind of defaults when they create new appointments and meetings. The question is whether we're planning to backport to 2016 MSI, and not at the current, not right now. This is a subscription-only feature in the Pro Plus kind. But we talked yesterday, and you are on E3, so you could consider updating to Pro Plus. Anyways, but that's kind of our general stance. Is people who buy a perpetual client, they bought a particular product, and we do bug fixes and security fixes, but we're not really trying to change things on people and add new features when you've bought a perpetual client. So anyways, the experience when you create a new appointment or meeting is you'll see that the end time is automatically reduced. So I had selected 10 to 10:30 on my calendar, but the meeting got created as 10 to 10:25. And even as I go to adjust the end time, all of the end times are adjusted by the little shortening period that you specify. And we really tried to be exhaustive about covering every entry point that you can use to create a meeting in Outlook for Windows. And there are many of them, but we think we got them all. And then the other thing is, if you want to bypass for a particular meeting, sometimes when I'm meeting with external people, I just want to book it for the full hour because that's kind of more of an industry standard. You can actually go into the end time and just type, 11 o'clock or something to get to the full hour. And then just the last note is we're not going to go through and change all of your existing meetings to make them shorter, but when you update those meetings, you'll get the same kind of end time adjustments to make it easy for you to bring those in line with your new defaults. So really excited to have this coming this quarter, and really looking forward to getting your feedback, and then seeing if it resonates with people, maybe we'll bring it to more endpoints. Okay, so we've really spent a lot of time digging into fixes we're doing to the core meeting experience across all endpoints. We also went deep into some of the kind of bigger features that we're working on, especially calendar sharing and these recurring series updates. But we thought we would end with just a really fun roll call of all of the fixes we've made across calendaring and all in the major endpoints. So this is just a bit of an excitement, a credit roll for us. We just want you to understand that calendaring and improving the quality of the small things is really important to us. A lot of these things aren't things that would cause you to stop using Outlook, but they're kind of minor annoyances that you might run into maybe every day for some people. But without further ado, our top request fixes. Okay, so first, we have 2 fixes in Scheduling Assistant in Windows. So previously we used to fix.
Thank you.
Woo! Thank you. You're welcome. It was a little hard to show on the screenshot, but basically you couldn't resize that attendee column, and now you can. So if you have longer attendee names or conferences, thank you. And just to call out, all of these window fixes are coming for both O365 and on-prem customers. I knew it would be popular, but I didn't expect it to. Okay, the second fix we're making is we're actually making it easier to add attendees from Scheduling Assistant. So previously, if you typed into the attendee column in Scheduling Assistant, it was quite difficult to add people, and you had to go to the address book to get them resolved. But now we're actually adding type-down name suggestions into Scheduling Assistant, so you can add attendees there the same way you do from the main meeting form. Yeah. Lots of love for Scheduling Assistant. I love it. Next, we've actually fixed kind of a long-standing room finder bug fix. Now that people are trying to book rooms in multiple buildings at the same time because of geolocation and things like that, when you pick a room from one room list, and then you switch a room list, and then you pick a room from the second room list, previously we're actually dropping the room you picked from the first room list and only keeping the second one. So you'd only end up with one of your 2 rooms. Now we fixed it so that even as you switch room lists, we keep the ones that you had selected before, so now you can actually use Room Finder to help you find rooms across multiple buildings. We've got two more. They're kind of related to reminders. So the first is showing reminders on top. So previously, a reminder wouldn't pop up. Like if I was actively working on a Word document and Outlook was firing a reminder, the only indicator would be that blinking icon in the taskbar. We got a lot of feedback from people who either use two screens or hide their taskbar or just don't pay attention to that they were missing meetings because they weren't seeing their reminders. But we've added a new option now. So even if I'm actively working in Word, the reminder will pop over on top of that. Yeah, so this is, we also did a little bit of work so it doesn't switch focus. So if you're typing in Word, you can keep typing and you don't lose any of your keystrokes. Just like another minor annoyance that might have come to bite us. And then the last one is, this is at Insiders now, but we're hoping to roll out soon, is you can automatically dismiss past calendar reminders. So previously, if you came back from Ignite, you might come back to a desktop with yeah, I'm so sorry we couldn't get this out before Ignite, but it's coming soon. You'll see a huge list of reminders. But now we have a new option. You can say, hey, I want these to be automatically dismissed if the calendar event is passed. So while the meeting is still happening, that item would still be there. But after it's over, it would just automatically go away from your list, and the reminders dialog would actually self-close. This is really so exciting, but those are the things we have for Windows.
So it's great that y'all love these, because we also thought they were really fun, and we're glad that y'all are liking these fixes too. So we'll talk about some fixes that are coming from Mac. So when we move to REST, not only do we fix the reliability of shared calendars and all your other calendars, but we also light up a ton of new features in the Outlook Mac client that used to not be possible. So in the past, you couldn't get inline images on your calendar items. You couldn't add file attachments. With this change also comes the option to prevent forwarding. It's the roamed calendar list, all these kind of things. Also support for Teams meeting creation in Mac. So all of this comes with the move to REST, and these have all been long-standing requests, if you look at Mac's user voice, that users have been asking for that we're fixing with this REST update. The second change is that if you are a university or a school, or even you want your personal Gmail account showing side by side with your work account in Mac, if you add a Gmail account today in Outlook for Mac, we actually start syncing your calendar and your contacts now, two-way sync with Google. So if you have a Gmail account or a Google Apps account, you can also add that and use the Outlook for Mac client to manage your calendar now as well. You used to only have Mail if you added a Gmail account. The final thing is we've been also fixing a lot of the parity with web and Mac, or web and Windows, where you can do some things from the meeting peak. So now in Outlook for Mac, you'll be able to join a meeting directly from the meeting card. You'll be able to see who responded and get some quick information about the meeting without having to open the entire form to learn more about what's happening on that calendar invite. On the web, a long-standing request was the ability to do different start and end time zones, which we already talked about. The second one is the scheduling assistant, which just has been like, now your scheduling assistant in web looks and feels just like your scheduling assistant in Windows. And you can also have the quick scheduling assistant that looks like your mobile one. And the final one is calendar search is coming to Outlook for the web. So if this is released, if you're in the new Outlook on the web, you can also search across all of your calendars, and you can filter by calendar as you're searching. So this is the new calendar search experience that comes first to Outlook for web client as well. And we have talked a lot about features for end users, so we wanted to share some things for y'all developers in the audience here. So the first major change that we made in PowerShell is y'all have always had this add set mailbox folder permission commandlet, and this is how you could grant calendar permissions for your users. But as you know, you could never grant delegate permissions previously with this commandlet. So this year we released the option to specify a new flag, and you can also, as you create and assign calendar permissions via PowerShell, you can also create as a delegate, and you can set whether or not this delegate can view private items all directly from PowerShell. Now, if you This was actually something that many of y'all came and told us after last Ignite session, that we talked about some other PowerShell commandlets remove calendar events when someone leaves the organization. This is another thing you asked for. So again, your evaluations of the sessions are truly important. We read every verbatim, and this tells us what you want us to work on, what, afterwards come find us. So this was something that y'all asked for, and we wanted to remind you to give us the feedback, because we really appreciate it. And also in this commandlet, you can say whether or not you want to send a sharing invitation to the delegate so that they get an email in their inbox and can accept and upgrade themselves to the new model. So those are released when you're setting permissions on a calendar folder. The other thing is our REST APIs. So coming soon to the Graph Beta endpoint, you'll be able to manage all of your calendar sharing permissions, view who it's currently shared with, send a new sharing invite, look at all the permissions and options just like you could from any Outlook client UI. You'll be able to manage and view new time proposals. You can also view the online meeting info that we talked about earlier, as well as create online meetings via Skype and Teams. And also already released to the beta endpoint is the new Free Busy API via REST that matches what you used to be able to do in EWS. Okay, so we're almost out of time, but we wanted to spend this last thing to say. You know, a big theme of this session was how much we care about your feedback, and every single thing you tell us we take into account, and that drives our priorities. So we wanted to let you know that these are 4 things that we're actively working on. We're not going and talking about them or demoing them at any Outlook client right now at Ignite, but these are 4 things that clients and service are actively working on. So the ability to hide the attendee list or BCC attendees is in progress. Changing the organizer of a meeting, we know. Last Ignite that came up, and we are actively working on that. So we are, and the other thing is meeting messages. You saw some of our stuff with recurring series. If you attended the intelligence session, you saw that meeting messages is a big area of focus for us, and we're working on making it easier to manage your calendar when you set up automatic replies, and thinking about how automatic replies work for you. We also wanted to call out a list of things that we have heard from you. These are top in our backlog, but we're not actively working on, just kind of to say these are things we're really aware of. Keep letting us know, sending us feedback, but none of these things are currently things that we're actively working on. With that, we want to thank you for attending our session and talking about calendar with us.